indeed a pleasure and honor to have you all, and I would first like to introduce our dignitaries for today. First is our host and alternate chairman of the National Action Committee on AfCFTA, Mrs. Dr. Zainab Shashima Ahmed, Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, ably represented by Hajia Jumai Katungun, Head Public-Private Partnerships, Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning. His Excellency Alhaji Mohamedou Badaru Abubakar, Executive Governor, Jigawa State. The Senior Special Assistant to the President on Public Sector Matters, Mr. Francis Anatokwe. The Director General of the Nigeria's Governor Forum, Mr. Ashiana Okaru. I would also like to go ahead and recognize the esteemed speakers for today. This includes Mr. Celestine Okanya, Director General, NINAS, Mr. Shegun Awolo, CEO, Nigerian Export Promotional Council, ably represented by Mr. Andrew Okilu, Deputy Director, Mrs. Chineye Aloma, Director General, LCCI. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. We'll be having an array of other esteemed speakers who will be joining us, and as they do attend, I will surely introduce them as they come. Yesterday, our host, Francis Anatopou, mentioned that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. And I'd like to congratulate everybody here for joining us to take this step further to advance AfCFTA in Nigeria. The theme, as we know, is building economically viable communities. And one of the issues that was repeatedly raised yesterday was the need for the states to develop their respective competitive advantages. So it's a pleasure to have all the representatives across the 6 geopolitical zones in Nigeria here today. We would like to give special thanks to our sponsors. This includes Nigeria Export-Import Bank, Bank of Industry, Coronation Bank, Cadbury's, AFEX, and Women Enterprise Alliance, as well as our partners, Nigeria's Governors Forum, Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Standard Organization of Nigeria, and welcome to Africa International. To give the opening remarks, kindly welcome to the stage Mr. Ashiana Okaru, the Director General of the Nigeria's Governors Forum. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I want to quickly start by thanking His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Jigawa State and Chairman of the Export Promotion Committee, National Economic Council. We sincerely appreciate you making it here this morning. We also want to quickly recognize the Minister, the representative of the Minister. I want to also recognize all the other dignitaries here, but as you know, we have to look for ways to manage time quickly. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to day 2. We started yesterday, the journey started yesterday, and the whole purpose is to get this at the lower level. I mean, getting subnationals involved in this agreement. I mean, that's basically it. For us at the Secretariat, it's been a learning process. I mean, I picked up a lot. The chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum was around yesterday, did a presentation, and I stated to yesterday that this has been a part of our agenda, the Nigerian Governors Forum. There was a marching order, directive by the chairman yesterday that we should prioritize this. Meaning, moving forward, we really have to look for ways to capture this on our agenda. So, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is the latest continental initiative to foster economic development in the continent. It will provide a continental platform for countries to showcase their products and services and position themselves as national brands. But as you know, the awareness of states of its benefits in Nigeria is very low, and that's the whole purpose of this meeting today. If this agreement is to succeed in Nigeria, it is important that we domesticate this at the state level. And that's exactly what I think we're doing right now. Successful implementation of this agreement in Nigeria is dependent on supporting the subnationals to organize themselves into functional units. Today's 3-day strategy workshop is designed to provide a central forum to reach a strategic understanding with state governments on the importance of tailoring their economic and development plans to accommodate the requirements of the agreement. It's also designed to provide a platform to acquaint the subnational government with the level of support available from the federal government and other bodies involved with the implementation. And then, of course, it's expected to enable the achievement of a consensus in vision and strategy between the federal and state governments. Yesterday at the opening ceremony, the executive chairman of Ekiti State and chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, reiterated in his keynote address that the commitment of the subnational governments to the implementation of this agreement and the opportunities of regional supply networks and employment creation and capacity building are things we really have to continue to emphasize. In setting the context for the strategy workshop, we had the ambassador Arca, who was very clear. I mean, that's a very experienced stakeholder. I mean, he told us a lot yesterday. We equally had some other very important personalities that spoke. We had Dr. Andrew Nevin, we had Dr. Coker, and a number of other people. Each state having understood the vision and mission of implementing this agreement at the subnational level. We broke into sessions yesterday, and I think at the end of the day, a lot of people left with a number of things. Today, we have a lineup of activities. Of course, just after this speech, His Excellency will give us a keynote address, and I just hope that there will be a lot of takeaways at the end of the session today. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I would first like to introduce our first keynote speaker, Mrs. Zainab Shashrima Ahmed, Honorable Minister of Finance, Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, ably represented by Hajia Juma Katungum, Head of Public-Private Partnerships, Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Please join us to give us the first keynote speaker for today.
Hello, good morning everybody. The Executive Governor of Jigawa State, Muhammad Badru Abubakar, and I stand on the existing protocol. I'm here to represent or read the keynote address of the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Mrs. Dr. Zainab Ahmed Shamsuna, who is unavoidably absent attending the Federal Executive Council meeting today. I read her speech, her keynote address. I fully appreciate the privilege to deliver the keynote address for the technical session for the ongoing workshop of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. The theme of the workshop, which is creating economically viable communities, is a component of a subnational strategy of the African Continental Free Trade Area to mobilize Nigerian communities and economic sectors across the country for effective participation in the African market. Having signed and ratified the agreement in July 2019 and November 2020 respectively, Nigeria has undertaken a series of actions to enable it to fully exploit the opportunities offered by the African Continental Free Trade Area. The coordinating role of the National Action Committee on the agreement continues to be critical in mobilizing relevant stakeholders of the Nigerian state for effective participation on the African market. The potentials of the African market of 1.2 billion people with a combined worth of $2.6 trillion in GDP are indeed great. There is no doubt that with a population of over 200 million, GDP worth over 400 billion, and the largest economy in Africa, Nigeria will be a major economic factor in a liberalized African economy under this agreement. However, for Nigeria to maximally exploit the opportunities presented by the African Continental Free Trade Area, all economic sectors, tiers of government, and human capacities must be involved. In this context, the recent national sensitization exercise carried out across the Federation was in the right direction. The ongoing workshops and technical sessions is in furtherance of the national consultation across the state, which were undertaken between March and June 2021. It became clear from this consultation that all states of the Federation are endowed with varying levels of economic resources and human competences, which can be deployed in the national interest. Accordingly, Nigerians' response to the African Continental Free Trade Area challenge must be an aggregation of economic and human potentials for the component part of the Federation, appropriately directed towards achieving continental advantages in trade and economic terms. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my opinion that the theme of this workshop, creating economically viable communities, should in the end result in policy recommendations to assist the state and local communities to 1. Identify and harness areas of competitive advantages. 2. To develop a regional and local African continental free trade strategy that would feed into the national framework. 3. To mobilize economically active segments of the population around production and skills competitiveness relative to the agreement, and to identify regional and local challenges that can jeopardize the successful implementation of the agreement. At the national level, the National Action Committee on the African Continental Free Trade Area and other relevant MDAs should institute or strengthen a formal framework for engagement between the national, state, and local actors, with a view to ensuring that the country's approach to African Continental Free Trade Area is indeed a truly national strategy to optimize its entry into the African market under the Free Trade Agreement. Finally, dear participants, as you commence the technical session, I wish you successful deliberation and look forward to positive recommendations that would facilitate the effective implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement across Nigeria. Thank you.
So I'd like to welcome our next keynote address, His Excellency Muhammadu Badari Abubakar, Executive Governor, Jigawa State, Chairman of the Export Promotion Committee, National Economic Council, to deliver his welcome address.
Thank you very much. My sister, the Honorable Minister of Finance, heavily and ably represented by the Director of Business Development, distinguished friends, colleagues, I've seen many, comrades and friends. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the day 2 of the AfCFTA Subnational Strategy Workshop put together by the National Action Committee and the Nigerian Governors Forum. I'm sure a lot has been said in the past 2 days for all of you here to understand why the AfCFTA was established. It is obvious that we can significantly increase intra-African trade through the removal of barriers to trade and movements of goods and services in the continent. There are so many numbers, I'm sure, and statistics around that shows this potential. However, although most of you call me calculator, I'm not here to discuss those numbers. I'm sure you have them all. I would like to focus my remarks on the reality of doing trade and my personal experiences. Before I ventured into politics, I was a modest trader based in Kano. Our business started with logistics. We transported food items, household goods, and petroleum products. Our fleet of trucks grew to over 400 in one time, and our operation covered all parts of Nigeria, so I know the local economy. As we grow, we move from roads to maritime logistics and eventually to manufacturing. We employed over 1,500 across the country, so I know the economy. I was also blessed and honored to be the national president of the the Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industries, Mines and Agriculture, NACIMA, and also second vice president of the Federation of West African Chamber of Commerce. So I know also the businessmen around. So this experience, I would like to give me some practical insight into Nigerian and African manufacturing and indeed trade. Due to the experience, when the idea of AfCFTA was plotted, my biggest concern was not on how it will be implemented. I was more worried about how the area will be monitored and how the rules will be imposed, specifically the rules of origin. This has been abused in the past, and if it is not carefully monitored, it will derail the whole AfCFTA program. Some of you in this room might remember the argument I presented to the economic management team and the Nigerian Economic Council at that time. And I think I've spoken so much on the issue of rules of origin at that time. And I think the team will look into it critically and be sure that it is really managed. Yes, the agreement provides huge export opportunities for products manufactured in Nigeria. Yes, the agreement theoretically supports backward integration, and yes, if properly implemented, the agreement will give preferential access to the huge African market, which currently sources over 80% of its products import from outside the continent. This means if we do this properly, thousands of jobs will be created in the continent. The question is, how can we implement it properly so we can convert those potentials to reality? My view is we need to do more to encourage investment in local production, because we have the numbers and we can probably develop the economic of scale necessary to penetrate into the African market. In many forums, I hear people talk about foreign direct investment, but what about domestic direct investment? How do we get Nigerians to invest more in Nigeria? How do we get Nigerians from different parts of the country to work together, leveraging on our core advantage and strengths? I think one of the problems we have in Nigeria, we forget we are Nigerians. Unless Nigerians invest, trade, and transact with each other, it will be difficult for us to compete on a continental basis. China take advantage of their population, produce for their people first, and that gives them the leverage of economic of scale, and then they have the necessary economic of scale to export to the rest of the world. Nigeria can do the same because we have the population, we have the potential. Again, I emphasize this Nigerian issue for the following reasons. Nigeria is over 20% of African GDP. Nigerians account for 16% of African population. Nigeria accounts for 76% of trading volumes in ECOWAS. Nigeria states GDP, Jigawa states GDP of approximately 3.5 billion is higher than that of the following countries. Djibouti was 3.4, Burundi was 3.2, Liberia was $3 billion, Central Africa was $1.9 billion. So if I have to compete with these countries, based on my population and my GDP, I will do well and more organized. If I do it organized, I will do more well to dominate and export to them, because I will have the economic of scale and I will have the opportunity. Only Jigawa State. In fact, the economy of Jigawa State and its trade with other states within Nigeria is bigger than the economies of close to 12 African countries. What we do in Jigawa with other states in Nigeria is really bigger than that trade we do. We have with the economics of the 12 African countries. To further push this point, the economy of Lagos is bigger than the economy of Benin Republic in total and Togo combined. The economy of Kano is around the same size of that of Niger Republic. Today, the subsidiary of Nigerian Bank in Guinea-Bissau, for example, is equivalent to opening a new branch in Ekiti, given the volume of business and the volume of attraction. In Jigawa, this advantage of being in Nigeria that has been the focus of our economic agenda, we push significantly to get investment from Nigeria. That was my focus from the last 6 years, to get significant investment from Nigerian companies that believe we can provide the necessary competitive advantage and location advantage. And that has been successful. We targeted companies based in Kano, Lagos, and Anambra. We also partnered with Jigawa citizens based on other parts of the citizens based in other parts of the country to invest at home. Today, we are gradually moving from a farming state to food processing state. Our GDP has almost doubled in the last 6 years. Just attracting targeted investment within Nigeria has helped our GDP to almost double in the last 6 years. We have seen our economy transforming from agrarian to agro-processing and industries in the last 6 years. So there is huge potential within ourselves that will prepare us and give us the necessary economic of scale to take advantage of AfCFTA. Our farms and factories also export product to Kano, Kebbi, Lagos, Rivers, Anambra, and many other states in the country. So I want you to just imagine what can we achieve if we fully tap into our potential, local potential. What can we achieve? And that will certainly prepare us to be competitive in the African market. Imagine if we can get just 100,000 Nigeria to invest 10 million naira in the logistics sector alone. For example, that will create about 400 jobs, direct jobs, and possibly millions indirect jobs as loading, offloading, service, and so on. Today it is harvest time and the Christmas is approaching. There is shortage of trucks that I know. So 100,000 Nigerians invest in only one truck will give you us direct 400,000 jobs and a lot more. And the market is open and ready. If we can convince 100 Nigerians to invest 200 million each in small vegetable mills, oil mills, fertilizer plants, agrochemicals factories, fish, cold rooms, and so on, who will have exportable items to send to other countries. Just look inward. Find those Nigerians, give them the target investment to do, and give them the opportunities. They will invest and they will profit from it, and that will give us leverage in AfCFTA. And I think this is the job of the sub-regional governments to do the targeting and to do the planning and to do the necessary feasibilities. Don't forget, all other African countries are looking at Nigeria as their target market. considering we account for a major proportion of the continent's population and the economic activities. They are all targeting at us. So we have the opportunity, we have the population, we have the all location advantage to put on industries only if we enlighten our people and have them think and think hard. We will produce for Africa. Yesterday I was discussing with a friend. He showed me some small trucks carrying water. I said, "Are you a big man? What are you doing selling water?" He laughed. He said, "Yes, I was driving around Kano, those new areas, new developed areas where there is scarcity of water. He saw a lot of queue where people pushing this cart that is carrying jerrycans of water, waiting, trying to get water from a source and distribute to the area." Then he started thinking. He moved to another area and he see the same. He said, yes, he can simplify this product, make money and make it easy for the people. Then he developed small trucks that carry some tons of water. Then he goes to those areas, different places, and asks those people to push in the trucks, take the water and deliver to the people. They get the water a little bit cheaper, they get the water faster to the people, and he makes money with it, and he created jobs. So by merely looking around you, you will see problems that people have, and you think critically, you will find solution for the problems of people. And within that solution, you make some money too, and you create jobs too, and you boost our economy. So the states will have to provoke this thinking. The state will have to provoke this discussion around the people, to look around them, to see around them what solution can they prepare. This same man also showed me a small van, the Suzuki Hijet, open body, and he put 2 levels. I said, how about this? What are you doing with this? You became a transporter of the tricycle? He said, no. It's another solution. In Kano, you do the tricycle for ladies separate, for men separate. Hardly we join them. So he provides the upper chamber for the man, the lower chamber for the women, demarcated. One tricycle can take women and men and divided them into 2, and they can take twice the capacity of the normal tricycle. Well, that particular motor has the same engine and almost the same fuel consumption. So he's double his intake, provides a solution for women and men issue that is in Kano, and make money with it and create jobs with it. Look around. There must be opportunity around your area, around your place, that you can help build this economy and create job for your people. At the state level, I'm sure our chairman have said it yesterday, but I want to reiterate it because he asked us, and this has been discussed at the Governors Forum, that my colleagues and I intend to focus on the following key areas to make the agreement work. A. Structural transformation and value chain optimization, including the development of industrial and agricultural processing zones. B. Strengthening the regulations and quality control of the products. C. Improving ease of doing business nationally and subnationally by harmonizing policies, laws, and regulatory procedures to attract large-scale investment. Example, increase access to credit, access to land, access to labor and skill, business registration, tax payment, etc., etc. D. Removing of skill acquisition for micro, small and medium enterprises to improve their readiness for subnational participation in the competitive market emerging from AfTA. Preventing distortions and discrimination in trade and investment tax rights under the AfTA must be mutually beneficial, including cross-jurisdiction income or profit flows, such as withholding taxes on payment to non-residents. I'm sure AfTA is looking at this and they will do something about this. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening, and I'm sure at the state level we will do our best and our really very best to make sure we enlighten our people to take advantage of our time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that keynote address, where His Excellency gave us practical insights on the realities of doing trade within Nigeria, as well as the opportunities. I think it was mentioned yesterday that for every challenge that you see, there's also an opportunity alongside. And it's an opportunity that can generate income and of course create jobs for Nigerians. One of the things that he also stressed, which is very important, is the need for us to look inwards. The importance of local investments, not just foreign investments. So, and again, it's amazing to see how this mindset alone has transformed and developed Jigawa State as well. So once again, thank you so much for that inspiring keynote address. I would like us to now proceed to group photographs before we go on to our first tea break of the day. So if we can just stand.
This one. Please, sir, did you previous office on the involvement of state government? You pointed out what Jigawa State has done in the last 6 years or so, but I would say this is just Jigawa State out of the 36 states. Is there a sort of collaboration between the states for states to trade with states in the first place?
Yeah, certainly. One example is Kenya and Lagos for rice production, lake rice. Many states do trade with each other, many states share investment. You see, we look at our competitive advantage and invite specific targeted companies to invest in different states so that we can produce first competitively, so that it will be cheaper to the people and it will be more competitive for us to get into the African market. So the more you talk among yourself, identify your competitiveness, identify where you can produce cheaper for the people, then you have the opportunity to export, sell at home and export to the people. And that is what we have been doing. For instance, in Jigawa State, we have competitive advantage in producing rice. So we invited all those that are producing rice to locate in Jigawa. That will reduce their cost of transport of raw materials. We give them all the opportunities there to engage with the farmers, and then they can produce competitively and cheaper. And that means cheaper to the people and possibility of cheaper export. Infrastructure is there, and I think all the governments are doing their best in infrastructure. I can tell you today, the governments are competing on the ease of doing business. That is why you see year in, year out, there are changes of who become number 1, number 2, or number 3. There is real competition among the governments on the economic development of this country. We are aware that the era of oil is almost going, and then we have to develop our economy, and we have to provide all the necessary support for the economy to grow so that our people can benefit from the development of the economy. Jobs can be created away from oil and government, and goods and services will be there and will be there cheaper. We are trying to develop, the Chinese model that I've said in Chinese, because they took advantage of their population, produce big because of the population. So that way they have the comparative advantage and the economic of scale to produce cheaper, and that is why they satisfy their people and also export. Nigeria and Africa have the largest population, so we can take on that model, produce and produce big. That gives us the competitive advantage. I was comparing Jigawa with some of the countries, as you can see. So my consumption in Jigawa is higher than a lot of other countries in Africa. And this means we have the capacity to consume. If we have the capacity to consume, then we have the capacity to produce big and big. And the more you produce, the bigger you produce, the cheaper it becomes. The cheaper it becomes, the more competitive you are.
Okay, so talking about the power to consume. You know, we consume so much, we produce so much, and we do that, with goods coming from other countries. So we have an agreement with Africa.
That is the purpose of this meeting, to provoke the thought, to provoke people, our businessmen, you and me and her, to look around us, what opportunities are there. I give example with a friend that has just been working on the street, saw an opportunity, grabbed the opportunity and turns it into business and job creation. So that is why this meeting is holding, to provoke the states so that the states can provoke their citizens and their businessmen to look around to see how we can invest. And I think coming out of this, the states will work together to see how we can merge businessmen to work together and develop businesses that will give us the necessary economy of scale. For instance, river transport and sea transport around the African sub-region is yet to be developed. For us to trade among ourselves competitively, we have to develop that. So we are in the process of putting together businessmen around the continent to look at this and develop a robust and reliable sea transport among us that will be cheaper, efficient, and solution solving to be able to trade among ourselves. There are vast opportunities out there, and the governors and the sub-regions, sub-nationals are working together to see how we can develop this. Because we also know that without being active and without production, this AfCFTA will not work for us. And like I've said, we all have seen the danger in 2015 and 16, where oil prices dropped to 30 something, and with the COVID, where it drops to even minus. We have seen that danger. We have seen what the revenue does at that time. So we are active, ready to push businesses and people to invest in Nigeria, and we can do it.
Thank you very much. Set of recommendations will also a plan of roadmap of actions going forward.
How soon are we going to get that?
It starts, so we will have a first draft at the end of tomorrow, and that will work with the states fine-tune, and we'll present Governor's Forum and we'll take it back to the National Action Committee, steering committee as well. So this is all building into that national implementation plan that we have.
So he's talking about sound monetary and fiscal policies, human development, and effective political institutions. So you need the institutions to make, to enhance the factor endowments you have. So it's not beyond natural resources. Then on top, you have the quality of the business environment. We're talking about the ease of doing business. We're talking about state of cluster development. We're looking at economic corridors. Which states you partner with private sector to further develop your factor endowments. It's also talking about sophistication of company operations and strategy. How developed or how is the operational framework for your organization? So it seeks to focus on improving productivity. So that is the end game for competitiveness. Next slide. Looking at the AfCFTA, my team and I, we looked at the strategic objectives of the AfCFTA. And you can see these are 5 of them, but the ones highlighted in green are the ones that we have seen a nexus with subnational competitiveness. So we're talking about promoting and attaining sustainable and inclusive socio-economic development, gender equality, and structural transformation of the state parties. We're also talking about enhancing the competitiveness of the economies of state parties with the continent and global market.
We're also looking at promoting industrial development through diversification and regional value chain. The other ones, not colored deep green, are still objectives of the AfCFTA, but I will not focus on those for now. Next slide. We've understood that Nigeria as a whole is becoming less productive, looking at an economic complex index. So this is a presentation, a graph showing economic complexity. It's an economic complex index. We're looking at states. The ones highlighted brown or thick rather is Africa, and then the leading economies in Africa, and then we're looking at Nigeria relative to the leading economies. You can see on the top is South Africa, that's the thicker line. And then on the second graph, we have Nigeria. So what this graph is basically saying is that measuring productivity by the degree of knowledge intensity required to transform a product over the last 20 years. So this is from the year 2000 to last year. Nigeria's economy has become relatively less complex, moving from 102nd to 140th in that slide. So that's to give it a context of how Nigeria operates compared to other economies on the economic complexity index. Next slide, please. But Nigeria does not operate on its own. This slide is showing the product complexity index. So we've dived deeper, looking at selective commodities within the Nigerian space. We have Ghana, South Africa, and Nigeria comparing economies. Now, there are a lot of commodities on this axis. So we'll talk about the most complex products. If we focus on Nigeria, you can see that we are exporting zinc waste or scrap. So that's how complex our productivity is. We do not develop our commodities to marketable or improving the value chain as the commodities are becoming more complex. If you look at South Africa, we have rolled stainless sheets there, and then for Ghana, we have plastic tubes and pipes and hoses and fittings. So what they have done, these other economies, is that they have taken the natural endowment and they have modified it. The truth is that the more competitive, the index for tracking competitiveness is tied to how complex your raw materials become. So you take the raw material and you add value and you add value. So the more value you add to it, the more complex your product become and the more value it will generate for the economy. So what Nigeria is showing here, what it shows is that we have grown more complex in producing and exporting raw materials, which require very few combination of skills and knowledge. We are taking raw materials and just basically exporting it without adding value to it. Next slide, please. So this is what competitiveness should look like. And previous speakers, especially His Excellency, the Governor of Jigawa and the Chairman of the Nigeria's Governors Forum, we talked about adding skills, adding value to the product. These are just examples. We have the story of Lake Kebbi and Lagos relationship, right? We're talking about lake rice. So yes, you're taking one particular product and you're matching it with the market demands. But then we can still add more value to that product. Like in these examples now, instead of just exporting cocoa alone, why don't we think about exporting chocolate? What does it take to export chocolate or to produce chocolate? There's still some more processes along that value chain which we need to explore. The next diagram there is talking about that is barite, and there's some state actors that are involved in barite extraction, Nasarawa and some other states across river. We can develop this endowment beyond its raw potential to exporting glass. And then we talk about even the manufacturing or the automobile industry. We can even go further to say, let's even make headlamps for cars. So that's the thinking. Competitiveness should be in the context of collaboration. And various speakers did mention that yes, we look at our factor endowments, but if there's no single state in Nigeria that has all the factors complete, but they say if you wait for the season to be right, you will never sow anything. So you have to look for your peers and you collaborate with them to develop the end product. There's also a concept called the economic corridors. So we look at states that share boundaries and then see how they can collaborate to work together. The last picture is talking about the final product, which is shoes, and this is leather. So height and skin, yes, Sokoto, there's leather there, you have a lot of livestock, but then how can we collaborate with other states to export the finished good? Because what will happen with AfCFTA, if we're not careful, is that Nigeria already has the market, the demand. So other states would, if we're selfish, we would just export the height and skin alone, and then some other economy else within the country will now buy it and send the shoes back to us, just like what the scenario that plays out with crude oil. We could have refined that and sell it as a much more valuable product. Next slide, please. So here it's talking about the endowment or the value chain. We have endowment, which all states, if you are privy to have seen the Book of States, as I mentioned in the beginning, each state has its factor endowments, but we need to move beyond that to production, to finished goods. And in between all this process, there's jobs, and there's skill. Skill and logistics translates to jobs. And if you look at some other economies, even outside Africa, they import the skill if they don't have. So for those examples like chocolate now, some other West African countries doing chocolate, if we do not have the know-how, you can import the know-how or send people from within your state, go and learn how it's done and come back and replicate that success. And then we can also refine the raw material and sell our own chocolate. We have cocoa. So the more value creating every state is endowed with something. There's natural resources. The factor endowments are land, labor, capital. That is common to all. But then to make a refined product, the endowments do not reside in one state alone. So they are spatially dispersed across the country. No single subnational has it all. So there's natural resources, there's skill and know-how, there's capital, infrastructure, and human capital. Next slide, please. So, taking the agricultural sector, chocolate production, what does it take? You need cocoa, you need sugarcane, you need milk. Now this is just the basic. I know there's still some more technical things that go into it, but these are the basic things. Now where are these raw materials located? Cocoa in brown, so you can see the states around the southwest and southeast thereabout. Yeah? Sugarcane in pink, so we have the northwest, we have the north central, and the livestock which produces the milk in green, where we have that's around the northeast and north central. So you see, the states that have these endowments are so many. We can be competitive through collaboration if we choose to produce our own chocolate. Next slide, please. Textile in red, rubber in the south, cotton in yellow. So you can see the states that have these endowments. If we work together, we can produce our own shoes, which we are already doing, but we can do it in a more competitive way. And not just looking at the domestic markets. The governor of Jigawa did talk about domestic investment. Instead of looking at foreign direct investment, you're looking at domestic direct investment. The capacity is within. The skills reside already in Nigeria. The skills and the technical know-how are actually dispersed across the country. If we work together, we can produce for domestic consumption and also export within the continent. Next slide. So ensuring Nigeria maximizes the AfCFTA potentials therefore requires that we rethink subnational collaboration as a strategy for improving regional development. By deepening product complexity requires interstate collaboration. We also have to work with the regulatory agencies because you have to talk about quality and standards. So it's a collaboration between the federal and the states and then within the subnationals themselves. We're looking at the macro and microeconomic conditions at the subnational level, which at this current state are poor and need to be improved. Yes, states have gone ahead to set up Ease of Doing Business Council, as an offshoot from the OVP. But then, how does that translate into making your environment competitive? The Economic Roundtable, the NNER, we've had some discussion with some states already on this, that how can we review the ease of doing business in your state? Yes, you have set up one-stop shops and all that, but do the investments come? So we need to rethink this thing and look at the skills that reside within our states, look at the infrastructure and the skill levels across board. Next slide, please. So this is a very high-level diagram. It's quite complex, but these are the things that it takes to move from raw materials, which is factor conditions, to demand conditions. And I'm using Kebbi-Lagos relationship as an example. So it's about ensuring that the macroeconomic context is right and enabling. If you sit Kebbi and Lagos together and ask, okay, was it just about seedlings and about a demand for Nigerian jollof rice? No, it was beyond that. There were a lot of processes that were put in place. There was the related and supporting industries, the regulatory agencies, so you're talking about relationships along this way. So to bridge factor conditions to demand conditions, there's a lot that needs to be put in place. Access to high quality business inputs, talk about qualified human resources. The capital has to be on ground, scientific and technological infrastructure. You have to look about strict quality and safety and the environmental standards, factoring weather and other unforeseen conditions. Because if you have a market, you have to be ready to meet those demands, barring all unforeseen situations from like weather. So then on top of that, it's even much more complex. You talk about context for firm strategy and rivalry. So that's talking about interstate competition. But that's a discussion for another day. But Nigeria is indeed competing with other states, even for our own domestic market. So we have to think about being re-engineering our process. Even the Kebbi-Lagos relationship is being re-engineered as we speak. Capacity is being established even closer to the market. I'm aware Ogun State and they are also in the discussion now because we're talking about proximity to market. Who has the closest seaport? Who has the closest airport to the external market? So I'm referring to outside Africa. Next slide, please. So in closing, we have a plethora of speakers who would take this and rip it apart and show us much more in their own context. But I just want to talk about the economic roundtable in closing, where research and policies support for states, and we have already started having a relationship with some states. Let me just put it on record that we have had meetings with the Cross River State team, the investment promotion team, to even critically look at the enabling environment there, the ease of doing business council, and we've reviewed what is going on there. We have 4 work streams in which we provide interventions. The Ready to Invest program, which we coined RIPE State Initiative. This is looking at the readiness to market for the states. 2, What Works Hub. So there have been some interventions from donor agencies in some select states. We are archiving these interventions and seeing how we can replicate it in other states. So that's what Works Hub is about. Subnational data and information. We're collecting data on how we can monitor and track improvements. So if you set policies, test them if they are working. If not, you now make corrective measures. And then, I did mention that the NGF partners with the NESG. They have this annual summit every year, and we look at recommendations from that annual summit, customize it for states for their implementation. So this is where I would land for today. The NGF is collaborating with the AfCFTA on this initiative, and the Secretariat is open for further discussion, deep dives into this quick presentation. But the takeaway should be that we can be competitive through collaboration. They say the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Nigeria has the market, Nigeria has the endowment. All we need to do is to refine and make sure we collaborate with each other to be competitive. Thank you very much.
Once again, the need for states to invest and improve on its competitive advantage was mentioned, but not just from the raw material side, seeing how we can add value to that produce. Okay. So I'd like to invite the panelists for our next session. We have Colonel Hamid Ibrahim, Comptroller General, Nigeria Customs Service, represented by Comptroller Anthony Ayologu. If you could please join us to the stage. We have Quality Requirements, Sanitary and Phytosanitary Measures, Celestine Okanya, Director General, please join us. We have the Executive Secretary, Nigerian Export Promotion Council, represented by Andrew Okeku. Please join us to the stage. And I really apologize for the mispronunciations. And lastly but not least, we have Chinyere Alomona, Director General LCCI. Please join us. I would also like to invite our moderator for today, Esiri Agbeyi, partner at PwC.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be standing on existing protocol and welcome to the panel discussion on readiness for trade, substantial market access. I also like the contribution from the earlier speaker about how we could enhance competitiveness nationally with deliberate and intentional effort around skills, as opposed to focusing on endowments alone. One thing also that re-echoes very strongly is the importance of integration amongst the agencies that would make this work, and I think he also alluded to that, in his contribution. And if we use the example of cocoa, which was highlighted, just looking at Nigeria alone, in 2016, despite the fact that we produce so much cocoa, in 2016, Nigeria only generated about $144 million from the exportation of raw cocoa. When you compare to the Netherlands, where we all buy chocolates, I'm sure everyone, when you travel, you buy those processed chocolates. Guess how much they generated from that? That's about $4.2 billion for the Dutch economy. So without belaboring the point, it's just very clear that we do have to do a lot more in recentering value within the continent. And that's really the underlying behind the models for free trade agreements, bringing closer the supply chain, the distribution channels to manufacturing, resituating those within the same region. And one of the key highlights is through duty reductions. So there's a lot that I think might be lost when you start to think about the duties that we will no longer collect, and I'm glad that we have the NCS represented here. But there is also a lot that can be gained from the direct and indirect employment from the jobs created, but also the value that we would then lock within the continent. And so on that note, I'd like to break down what we'll be looking to discuss here. We will try to focus on the rules of origin, which is an important factor for taking this forward. Quality requirements. One of the key takeaways from yesterday was around the certifications required for the products that we will send out. Just even exporting a product like yam, which we have in abundance here, at the point of exportation, there's a lot more scrutiny, and we don't get those products as far as we want them to. Whereas Ghana, which is a neighboring country, might, pass those tests. We would look at configuring for export, product, price, place, and promotion, and then we would also look at how we access those opportunities from a language barrier perspective to matchmaking and partnerships that are required to move this forward. I'll start first with introducing Dr. Chinyere Alomona. Okay, thank you. I just paused there and very quickly introduce Mrs. Kadiri Adimat, who would be our representative from NAFDAC, one of the strong agencies that would be required to take AfCFTA to the next level. Welcome, Madam. And just as she comes up stage, I'd like to have her seated. Just a few more points to think of. The rules of origin are yet to be completed by state parties, and according to the Honorable Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, negotiations are about 87% complete. The rules of origin will ensure that only made in Africa goods enjoy those duty reductions that we talked about. But there is a lot to be said about the non-tariff barriers, some of which the agencies here would, I believe, do justice to. I would like to introduce at this point in time Dr. Chinyere Almona, who is representing, and in fact is the DG of the LCCI, to kindly talk through her presentation.
Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Please allow me to stand on existing protocols. This morning, I'm going to be talking about the AfCFTA, but readiness for trade. Readiness for trade. How do we access the opportunities? When I listened to the keynote speaker, the Executive Governor of Jigawa State, something occurred to me. It occurred to me that perhaps I should move to his state when he describes the opportunities in his state. As that thought flowed through my mind, it also occurred to me that in the past, every time I have listened to a state governor talk about the opportunities in their state, I get the urge to move to their state. So I can't keep moving, right? But that tells us that there's so much potential in Nigeria. There's so much potential, but how do we access the opportunities? The AfCFTA opportunities. When we think of accessing opportunities, one thing comes to mind is entry. How do we ensure entry? And that's why I have the image of a key. How do we ensure entry? To gain entry, you have to have the right keys. And over the years, over the months since we signed the AfCFTA, we've talked about how to make progress, and I've heard more about removing the barriers. The truth is, if you remove the barriers and you don't promote access, we won't achieve the efficiencies in the AfCFTA. So, quickly, the next slide, please. In looking at readiness for trade and accessing these opportunities, we look at how do we access the opportunities through language, how do we access the opportunities via market intelligence, how do we access the opportunities through matchmaking and partnerships, and then a few key takeaways. Now, the overall objective really is to ensure that when we go back to our states, we can now think about what to do within our states to ensure that business people in our states, production, agri in all sectors within our states can gain access to the international market. Let's even start with the regional market. Can gain access to the regional markets in an efficient and effective manner. Next slide. When we think of market access through language, I like this definition that if enough people in two countries speak the same language, they'll be able to communicate with each other more readily. And when we talk about speaking the same language, it doesn't necessarily have to be the official language. I've found that if we speak some common elements of the language, that's good enough. And consequently, you have easier trade between the countries, which will be cheaper, more intensive, more transparent. Can you just tap one? Yes, so for exporters to the UK, I found this very interesting statistics in the cost of to the UK of language deficiency. Before now, I never thought about language deficiency or that the fact that language deficiency has cost assigned to it. But it seems that for exporters to the UK's two largest trading partners, France and Germany, so to export from the UK to France and Germany, language and cultural barriers are rated the second most important or frequently cited barrier to export. So the UK is losing revenue because of language barrier. Next slide. So if it is the second most important or frequently cited barrier, it is significant to trade agreements, trade transactions between the countries. And we need, easy flow of language to do research into foreign markets. What do they want? What do they like? What are the people like? How do we work within these countries? We need to be able to communicate with our counterparts. We need to be able to communicate within the supply chain. We need to be able to communicate with, trading partners, our customers. We need that communication happening. And marketing products to foreign consumers, but I believe that language should not be a barrier. It should actually be an access key. Now I have some statistics here, which for me was interesting, that when two countries share same official language, they tend to have 1.8 times higher trade. And that if EU countries had a higher level of multilingualism, trade would be 30 to 60% higher. These statistics are shocking, considering that we never really think about language as a barrier. When we do business within Nigeria, or we do business, those in the south do business within themselves, or those in the east do business within themselves, we never really think about the importance of language. But when you do consider it, you find out that once you go to a place, if I go to Kano, for instance, and I go to the market and I speak my language, Igbo, to somebody from the east in the market, the person, the dynamics will change. So when you think of that small, minute example, you realize what happens at the bigger scale when there is, commonality in languages. So these are the other statistics which I found very, very interesting, and which tells me that we need to do something. So next slide talks about what should the government do. So governments have the capacity to change populations' linguistic skills. When I studied in the UK many years ago, I always wondered about the population of Chinese in the UK universities. I just wondered. There were so many. In fact, in my apartment, I had a Russian and a Chinese. And, it was just like everywhere. They were everywhere. But the truth was, in looking at a report by UK Investment and Trade, I realized that it was a deliberate action to attract foreign languages in. And then you give these foreign students placement in your companies, and so they can facilitate trade. I never thought about it like that at the time. But these are ways to implement language policies that bring in other languages that you want to conduct trade in. If you think about Africa, there are major languages. So English is common, yes, but then you have French, you have Swahili, you have Amharic, you have Portuguese. So you have all of these languages, and if we kind of get a hang of it, it will help us in doing businesses in those areas. So government can also encourage flow of international students into higher institutions by ensuring that we have the adequate facilities to attract. What should businesses do? Next. So while we think of what government can do to enable the larger sphere of things, what should businesses in your states do to break that barrier, to use language as a key? So one is, of course, if you're going to do business in Côte d'Ivoire, your business materials must be in English and French. If you want to do business in East Africa, you must have a way to translate things into Swahili. Next slide. Market access through market intelligence. So you think of language, think of market intelligence. Market intelligence is just being aware of what obtains in your sphere, your type of business, competition, vendors, customers, industry, all of those. I found this interesting. Cost of ignorance, just like I didn't think of cost of language, there's a cost to ignorance. It says that firms that are considered ignorant have at least a 46% lower export turnover ratio. and the reverse is the case for firms that seek advice about specific markets. So it's important to think about market intelligence. How do we gather that? Next slide. A key challenge for exporters is scarcity of reliable or perceived scarcity. Because if you say scarcity, that's relative. I'll share with you a few places where businesses can find market intelligence. So businesses need to stay on top of the competition, and I like this ITC, International Trade Center. Their market intelligence tool contributed to $300 million in trade transactions. So market intelligence is important, and I have here dynamic market intelligence platform. I have the market access map on this side, and I have the ECOWAS trade information system. Often, because I am the Director General at the Lagos Chamber of Commerce, the foremost chamber of commerce in Nigeria and in West Africa, with a large membership base. Sometimes when my members within the SME group or export group starts to say, we don't have enough information about this, about that, I start with, where have you searched? Often we haven't searched, so we don't even know the information that's available. If we don't know the information that's available and we can't use the information that's available, how do we scale? How do we do business successfully? Remember, there's a cost to ignorance in business. Next slide, please. The International Trade Center presents a few tools which I found very captivating, apart from the colors. But it just tells you that the information is available that you're seeking, and you can dimension it in any way you want. So when you take the market access map, you can see, where oranges from Nigeria are being exported to in the world. Cashew nut, where is it being exported in the world? That gives you an idea of what the opportunities are. You can say, where in Africa do they, consume produce from Nigeria? That gives you an idea of your access, gives you an idea of opportunities. It helps you to perhaps diversify or add value to your product. We just talked about competitiveness. It helps you to position yourself right. You have the export potential map, you have sustainability map, you have the procurement map, investment map, and all these are available on the ITC website. And for some of them, you need to pay some subscription fees, but for economies like Nigeria, it's actually free. So for some economies, emerging market, it is free. So we can use it. The trade map presents information on export performance across the world, and you can bring it down to export performance within the African region. The information is updated on a regular basis. So if we take a trade map, it's a good trade map. So next slide gives an example. So a trade map, you want to find out what's going on in Nigeria. Next slide gives you an idea of merchandise trade, everything that's going on. So you begin to say, how do I place myself as state actors? You want to see where are the things we produce in my state being marketed? Where is it doing well? So that you can position yourself right. And if you drill down a bit further, next slide. And you can check by different sectors, depending on what you're interested in. So information is available, but sometimes there's perceived scarcity. But information is an access key. Next slide, matchmaking and partnership. The last presenter talked about collaboration promotes competitiveness. If we can come together and pool our resources together, pool our strengths together, we can do so much more. And so business matchmaking is a method of identifying and connecting companies and people with common interests. So as a business, as a state player, you need to find out where can I move my businesses to in order to connect them with other businesses, perhaps with better business technology, that we can advance. I was speaking to a representative from Finland recently, and she just kept saying, we want spices from Nigeria. And I'm thinking, yes, that's true, that makes sense. I mean, Nigerian spices, no other like it in the world. But we need to produce them at the right quantity, right standard for export. Next slide. International trade thrives on networking, matchmaking, trade partnership, commercial agreement. That's a no-brainer. That's the way the business world flows. And so at the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, we organize series of outward and inward trade missions to connect our members to businesses across the world. We also provide opportunities for our members to understand the requirements such that language and business intelligence won't be a barrier. Trade fairs, so we organized, this year we had the 35th edition of the Lagos International Trade Fair. Trade fairs are an opportunity to network and establish trade partnerships across the border. I spoke to two people at the trade fair and I asked them at the end of the 10-day trade fair, how was it for your business? Did you make a lot of sales? And one woman was very excited. She wasn't so much interested in the sale that she made at the trade fair. That was good for her. But the fact that she got business connections, those who could take off her products and sell, she was able to connect herself with other businesses. That way she's expanding her influence, she's growing her business and her revenue. So partnership is important. And thankfully technology has enhanced B2B's, business to business engagements. Next slide, key takeaways. So when we think about the AfCFTA and doing business across the border, there are risks and uncertainties. Definitely, we won't be in business if there are no risks and uncertainties. But market intelligence helps to reduce the burden of that risk. So we must do our homework. Businesses within your states should be encouraged to do the homework. Countries and companies are beginning to move away from direct exports, perhaps because of the supply chain problems, but they are seeking to establish trade partners abroad. So we need to position ourselves to attract that kind of engagement with them. I talked about the discussion I had with the lady who wanted a lot of spices from Nigeria. As I leave back to Lagos, I'm hosting 2 different countries. I'm hosting Russia in our premises for businesses, business to business engagement, matchmaking sessions, and another one with Finland. So these are things that are happening. Countries are they want to increase bilateral trade, they want to increase the balance of trade with Nigeria. Trade fairs provide access to new markets. So sometimes businesses think, trade fairs are difficult, trade fairs are expensive. I encourage states to take the businesses within their states to trade fairs. When you carry your businesses to trade fair, it helps them, it exposes them to what could be, exposes them to new technology, new products. At the Lagos International Trade Fair, we're in Lagos, so we had Lagos State bring businesses, SMEs, to the trade fair, and there they are exposed to new customers. We had Arca come to the trade fair, so states can come to the trade fair with their businesses. You kind of help them, encourage them to do businesses across the nation and across the region. We must explore resources that provide trade promoting institutions, that provide trade information. Finally, I think my final slide. Next slide talks about recommendations. So what should you do? What should the NGF do? Please identify the natural resources in your territories. We talked just now about factor endowment. When you identify that, you realize that it's not just the raw materials. We need to move away from exporting raw materials. We need to add value to the raw materials because what we get back is so much more. So we must add value to the raw material. So think about your factor endowment, but then say, how do we add value so that the product, the outcome is more valuable? And then you can create jobs, so much jobs. Explore the possibility of establishing special economic zones. The keynote speaker talked about processing zones. Explore these because they help bring them together in a place where perhaps some of the infrastructure that they need will be easily accessible and they can do business, and you're connecting raw material to production facility to goods being in the store. Develop an AfCFTA strategy for your state. I believe that's what, hopefully at the end of this 3-day session, you'll be going away thinking, how do we do this? How do we develop a strategy that will work for your state? Build integrated road and rail networks for goods and raw materials, and ensure effective stakeholder engagement and effective communication. Thank you very much for listening, and I will take my seat, listen to the other presenters, and then we'll have a conversation. Thank you very much.
So just listening in, the ITC map that you presented, kind of identified where we could find certain things across the continent. I wonder if there would be any value in developing that nationally, taking into consideration the comparative advantages of the states, and then look at a way of ensuring that that value chain is maximized first within Nigeria before we start to look for partners outside.
Thank you, Esiri. I think that's a brilliant suggestion, that we need to do something similar for Nigeria, where states can populate their information, and we can. It's probably going to be more accessible to local players than trying to find ITC and being overwhelmed by the information across 200 countries. So yes, it's a possibility, and we should take it serious. We should look at it more strategically and the benefit it brings to the nation. Thank you for that suggestion.
Thank you. I'd like to call on stage Mr. Segun Awolowo, the Executive Secretary, CEO for Nigeria Export Promotion Council, for his own insights.
Executive Officer